Welcome to today's episode. Now that you know all about the parts of self and are ready to jump in and learn some things about your parts of self, you can absolutely do this work yourself. But if it gets weird or scary, it might be time to seek out some guidance from a therapist. But how do you even go about it? Who do you call? Not Ghostbusters. And how do you know when a therapist you're trying out is right for you? That's what we're learning about today. Okay, this way into choosing the right therapist for you.
So I guess the first question is, what is therapy? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So people get therapy and counseling intertwined, intermixed, confused, whatever. They're very similar, but they're different. So, at least according to the Iowa Board of Social Work, therapy is diagnosing and treating mental health disorders using, different therapy models like EMDR, ego state, like internal family systems, CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. So that's therapy. You have a mental health diagnosis or diagnoses, and you're working on treating them. Counseling is basically just general guidance for anything like a guidance counselor, a camp counselor, a financial counselor, so on and so forth. So a counselor doesn't necessarily need a degree, doesn't need anything necessarily specialized, but can help people with general things. So things get really confusing with this because there's a degree called mental health counseling. And if someone's a licensed mental health counselor, they're a therapist. They're doing therapy with you.
Okay.
So that's where things get confusing. Counseling, therapy, I mean, it is an interchangeable word, but I just want you to understand the difference between one is working on mental health disorders or diagnoses, and the other one is working on whatever.
Yeah.
So the next confusing thing is these credentials that therapists have, like LMHC, licensed mental health counseling. There's also licensed marriage and family therapists. There's licensed independent social workers or licensed independent clinical social workers. In Nebraska, there's licensed independent mental health practitioners. So there's lots of different letters and labels, so on and so forth, for people who do therapy. There's also PsyD, which is a psychological doctor, a doctor of psychology.
Oh.
Most of the time, these different credentials, licenses, letters, whatever, all basically say that you have the skills and abilities to do therapy, but from this slightly different angle. So I have a bachelor's and master's of social work. So I'm a licensed independent social worker in Iowa, licensed independent clinical social worker in Minnesota. And so the social work background is different from like the mental health counseling background. Social work really looks at everything from a big picture point of view, person and environment. And that's the basis of basically looking at what's going on with you. It's not just a mental health diagnosis, it's what's going on in your life. What's gone on in your life, birth to now? What's going on in your community? What's going on economically for you? Do you have a job? Do you have transportation? So looking at it from a social work lens, we're looking at things from so many different angles. If we look at licensed mental health counselor, their background, their degree basically looks at what's going on just within the person. Psychology does that as well. And so these different, again, credentials, letters, licensure, whatever, it just basically tells you what that person's background is and how they're going to conceptualize or look at your case. Mm-hmm. And your case is, what do you bring to the table? What do you want to work on? What are your diagnoses? What's going on in your life? So the other thing about therapy and counseling or whatever is not medication. Period. It's not medication. If you want medications for psychiatric problems like depression, anxiety, whatever, then you go see a psychiatrist. Psychiatrist is diagnosing mental health medications for mental health disorders. Psychologist does not do medications. People get these mixed up a lot. Mm-hmm. You don't have to have just a psychiatrist. There can be psychiatric nurse practitioners. You can do your primary care physician. I mean, anyone who can prescribe medications, you can get psych meds from if they're comfortable. A lot of general practitioners or PCPs don't because they're like, that's not my purview. Mm-hmm. Go see a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just because you saw the commercial on TV doesn't mean that you should be taking that drug.
Right. Agreed. Or that your general doctor is going to prescribe it to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a whole nother can of worms we can get into, but we'll save it for another day. Yeah. So again, therapy again is you have a mental health diagnosis, and here we're what we're going to do to treat it. If you don't have a mental health diagnosis, for example, if you're just struggling with life, things are stressful, you're not diagnosable for depression, anxiety, whatever, whoever you see, a therapist, counselor, whatever, they're not going to be able to bill your insurance. So you'd have to pay out of pocket for that, which isn't a bad thing. It's just you want your insurance to pay for it, but your insurance basically has to say you have to be diagnosable before we're going to pay.
Mm-hmm.
And so this gets to be a whole nother can of worms too, which we'll probably get into another day as well. So basically, if you're not diagnosable, you can still get therapy if you want. It's just not going to be based on these mental health diagnoses. There could be the symptoms of depression, anxiety, PTSD, whatever, that you're not just full blown diagnosable. You might have a few symptoms. You can still work on that.
Mm-hmm.
Counseling would also work too in this situation. It's not that big of a deal because it's not like you're dealing with mania, suicidal depression, so on and so forth, flashbacks. I mean, counseling can be helpful for so many things. So if you don't have a diagnosis, great, you can still seek some counseling. Not a
Mm-hmm.
problem. Not a problem. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, what do you even want to get out of being in therapy? That's often the most difficult question.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm in an intake, which is the very first appointment with someone, an intake is just, hey, how are you? Who are you? What do you want to do? Kind of stuff. Let me hear about your background. What sort of symptoms are you dealing with? What are your struggles? So that's an intake. So in the intake, a lot of the time I'm asking clients, so what do you want to get out of therapy? They're like, I don't know.
Sometimes I think it's hard to put that into words. Like
Yes.
they know maybe the answer is just, I just want to feel better. But
Yeah.
it's hard to put that into words because
Hmm.
that's pretty generic.
It is,
But
but still a good starting point.
sure. And you know
So
the right questions to ask after that, the follow-ups, I'm sure.
yeah. So if you want to feel good, what does feeling good feel like, look like, sound like? What are you doing differently when you're feeling good?
Mm-hmm.
How can we get you there? That's my job, but if that's where you want to be, let's get there. So let's figure out where you're starting. Essentially, that's the intake. If you don't know what you want to achieve in therapy, then just the general, this is what brought me here. You know, my husband and I were fighting, and I'm just so pissed off, and I'm tired of this shit, and okay, let's talk about that. Let's figure out some goals from that. We'll get into that goal later, but let's just talk about this. Let's hang out here.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you don't know definitively what you want to work on in therapy, if you just have a general sense, cool, great, good. Here are some generic categories that people generally come to therapy for. So the first one is stabilization. So if people's symptoms, life, whatever, are just kind of unmanageable, then stabilizing just to make sure that things can be okay day in and day out. Stabilizing is a very important thing for therapy. Even if you don't know or think you need stabilization, I think everyone really does in a way, because when we have these big stressors, when we have these real or perceived threats, whatever, it can throw us off, regardless of how small it seemingly is. Our bodies, our minds, our whole beings, we want to be in homeostasis. So homeostasis is basically just the body's way of regulating. This is good day in and day out. Homeostasis is your body temperature being the same, you know, your digestion, all your body functionings working the way they're supposed to. And we want homeostasis for our emotions, our mental health, our relationships, all of that stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
So stabilization really helps to realign this homeostasis. And the types of therapies that therapists or counselors, but usually therapists will use is cognitive behavioral therapy or dialectical behavioral therapy or solution focused therapy. And there's some other ones out there, but those are the top three. So CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, basically looks at your thoughts, your behaviors, and what's going on here. What can we make more logical? What's not logical? How can we help you see what you're actually doing that is contributing to this? So it's basically just reflecting on what's going on for you with your thoughts and your behaviors. It doesn't really get too much into emotions and past stuff. It's really more here and now, which is okay. So is solution focus. Solution focus is, well, what helped you out the other day when you were struggling? Well, I counted to three and I just took a look around me and I realized I was okay. Okay, so do more of that. That's solution focused.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty basic and I use it sometimes, but again, this is more for stabilizing than anything else. Dialectical behavioral therapy is more for people with symptoms that are kind of all over the place. And dialectical behavioral therapy was developed by a lady named Marsha Linehan, and she worked with a lot of people with borderline personality disorder. And if you met anyone with borderline, you'll understand what I'm saying, but people are very disorganized in a lot of the ways they interact with people, the way they think, the way they emote, because people with borderline and other cluster B personality disorders, their parts of self are just kind of doing their own thing. There's
Hmm.
not a lot of internal cohesion amongst their parts of self. And so it's like clowns in a Volkswagen. I say this all the time. It's like they're driving the bus, there's one clown, and then all of a sudden they stop and they do a fire drill, and there's another clown driving the bus, and it's like 50 clowns in this little Volkswagen Beetle, and it's just, this is kind of how it looks like
Okay.
if you're talking with someone with borderline, especially if they're stressed out. The more stressed
Yeah.
out they are, the more you see this. I'll give you an example. This is not to make fun or make light or anything with people with borderline. This is just an example of how it tends to go. And if you have borderline and you haven't noticed this in yourself, this is a good place to reflect. So, for example, if my sister, my sister doesn't have borderline, but if my sister is stressed out and she comes attacks me like, well, you fucking bitch. I'm like, whoa, what did I do? Well, you're such a terrible person and blah, blah, blah. Well, I didn't do that. Well, why did you hurt me like that? I can't believe you would do that to me. And oh, but this is a real problem that we should really try to, problem solve and figure out. It's not a big deal, but you fucking bitch. I can't believe you. And like, but why are you treating me like, why are you talking to me like that? I'm not talking to you like that. So it's like five different people in one
Hmm.
sentence. It's different parts of self.
Hmm.
So DBT is really good for stabilizing. It's really good for helping you realize what's going on with me, building self-awareness. How does my emotional intensity or stress response intensity impact what I'm doing, what I'm thinking, how I'm interacting with people? DBT is very good to just help you just take a breath, observe. A lot of people need these skills.
Hmm.
Not just people with borderline or personality disorders. A lot of people need these
Hmm.
skills because self-awareness is the biggest factor on a personal level helping you achieve your therapy goals. If you're more self-aware, the farther you're going to go in therapy.
Okay.
I'm just curious, do you have any questions about any of that so far, just for stabilizing?
What kinds of things would you give somebody who's all over the place like that? Or are you going to get into that later?
No, this is a good question. I wasn't going to
Okay.
get into it.
Oh, okay. Well, you don't have to if you don't want to, but I feel like because I know somebody like that, my friend who I believe was a narcissist.
Hmm.
She in that conversation that we had, our last conversation,
Yeah.
she was screaming at me. She was crying. She was, oh, I'm so sick. Oh, and it was the dramatics and the you've made me feel bad now and all of this
Hmm.
back and forth. And I just kind of sat there like watching the ride
Yeah.
and waited until she came back. And
Uh-huh.
then I was like, could we continue now? Um, but like, what would you suggest to somebody who is the person doing that?
Hmm.
It, or do you just have to wait for them to figure out that they're doing it? Maybe they don't even know they're doing it.
They probably don't even know they're doing it.
Okay.
So self-awareness. So DBT, every time you meet with someone you're doing DBT with, they will give you a therapy assignment to work on in between. And every good therapist will give you a therapy assignment to work on, unless you're doing well, just keep doing what you're doing. It's good stuff.
Hmm.
So the therapy assignments really revolve around observing from a neutral third party, fly in the wall, it is what it is, no emotions attached, just observing point of view. Before anyone can get there, that's all they're doing is just, okay, let's take a look. Let's take a look. Let's take a look. Building that self-awareness because people with parts of self who are not cohesive, the self, which is the who drives the bus, who the whole of our parts of self, the core of who we are, the self isn't necessarily present. with this because of these different parts of self just jumping in the driver's seat.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to just observe, see what's going on within ourselves, our emotions, our thoughts, our body sensations, that helps to bring the self more solid and more consistently. So really, that's what DBT is for. It's just look at what's happening. Let's take a look at this from a logical point of view, a nurturing point of view, a mature, wise point of view. There was an EMDR training for EMDR and DBT, and the lady who presented this talked about wise mind. And wise mind is being able to observe your emotions, your body sensations, and your logical thoughts together at the same time. And so that's really what DBT is looking to achieve, is just helping someone, again, observe from a neutral third party, but being able to observe those emotions, those intense body sensations, the motivations that can be really intense as well. Even though emotionally intense, still calm logically. So
Okay.
that's really, again, the goal of DBT. And again, until someone can get there just in an observational state, you're not going to do a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
You got to have enough stability.
Mm-hmm.
So, looking for a therapist that does these skills for stabilizing, any therapist I think would be good for stabilizing. Pretty much every therapist does CBT. If you need DBT, you do want to find someone who's at least trained in it, certified would be better. So again, if you're not really knowing what you want to work on, you just want a little bit of stabilizing, just things to be a little bit better, any therapist would do. That'd be great. And give baby therapists a chance. So therapists that are just out of grad school, who are under supervision, who are temporarily licensed or provisionally licensed or whatever, give them a chance. They all need the experience, and every client they talk with helps them grow. All right, so moving on. If one of your goals is more growth, then you want to look for a therapist that will do CBT or narrative therapy, person-centered therapy, ego state, EMDR, psychodynamic. There's more. I could go on. Basically, any therapist that does more than just CBT would be good for growth. CBT will help you grow, but it has limitations for it's here and now kind of stuff. It's surface kind of stuff. So if you have deeper things, CBT will help stabilize, will help you get to the deeper places, but it's not going to really touch those deeper places. So if you want a little bit of growth, CBT is fine. But basically, any other therapy is good too.
Okay.
If the therapist has faith and confidence in the type of therapy they're doing, is great. Good. That's all you need.
Okay.
Yeah. So for that type of therapist, you might want to look for someone with a little bit more experience, maybe someone with a certification, like a CBT certification. It doesn't really matter. Any more seasoned therapist would be good for that. And then lastly, if you're looking for trauma healing, then you want to be more specific in the type of therapist you're looking for. So at a minimum, you want a therapist who does CBT, DBT, EMDR, and ego state. Ideally certified in EMDR or above.
Mm-hmm. That's a
Because
lot of letters.
it's a lot of letters. Yeah, it is. So if you're looking for a trauma therapist, you definitely want to look for someone who's got more years of experience, especially as an EMDR certified therapist. So I've been a certified EMDR therapist for just under 10 years now. I'm an improved consultant. I do ego state, all of these things. And I think I'm a pretty good trauma therapist, but there is much better out there than me, trust me. And I can name off the names, and I don't think they're seeing a lot of clients anymore because they do a lot of training. Like Sandra Paulson and Jim
Oh.
Knipe, they're fantastic. But there's a lot of good trauma therapists out there. You, again, want to look for minimum EMDR certified or more and ego state trained or certified. That's what's going to get you really deep. That's what's going to get to the roots of these things
Mm-hmm.
and help weed them out.
Mm-hmm.
So really, what you want to achieve in therapy is basically your first step after you decide you want therapy. What do you want to achieve? And that's going to help you navigate which therapist you want to lean toward.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you find a therapist and you don't know if it's going well or not, or maybe it's fine. How do you know this is a good fit for you?
Mm-hmm.
You want to make sure your therapist is a good fit, just like your shoes are a good fit. If you go running and you're in the wrong fitting shoes, what's going to happen?
Gonna hurt.
Yeah, it's going to hurt. Yeah, it's going to be more annoying and frustrating than it should be. And it's just not going to go the way it's supposed to.
And you're not gonna want to run anymore.
That's right.
Run anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. Yep. So the very first thing is it feels right. That seems kind of woo woo, but it's got to feel right. Like
Yeah.
if it just feels stiff and like, oh, I don't know, this dude's got the wrong vibe for me or whatever. If it doesn't feel right, it's probably not going to work. A caveat to that is sometimes, a lot of the time, with trauma and bad past experiences and whatnot, that can really color how it feels. For example, if you've had bad experiences with a dude, you don't want a dude therapist. And that's just kind of the way it goes.
Yeah.
Uh, it feels right. It's got to feel right. So the next thing is, after you determine it feels right, the therapist has accurate reflective listening. So reflective listening is basically like, okay, Amy, so you tell me a story, and then when you pause in the story, or we're like, oh, so Joe did ABC and Wanda didn't like that. So okay, yeah, tell me more. So that would be my reflective listening. And if that's
Hmm.
accurate, great. If it's attuned, great. If the therapist's like, well, Joe didn't do this and Wanda was happy about that, I mean, that's not active reflective listening. That's
Hmm.
getting it wrong. That means
Hmm.
the therapist is preoccupied or not listening or whatever. You want someone who's actually going to listen.
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah, number one, I would think.
Yeah, you'd think. Yes. So accurate reflective listening. They're attuned to you. They're also validating and empathetic. I've had several clients who have come to me from a different therapist, and they're like, I really didn't like her because she just laughed at me or she made light of
What?
my situation. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. I've had clients say, yeah, well, I said ABC and she just laughed at me. And it's like, that's the really vulnerable thing I told to you, and you're just laughing at me? What? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Shit like this happens.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah. Or someone like, they just didn't take me seriously. They didn't validate me. They were
Mhm.
just like telling me I should do this instead. And yeah. So they have to be validating and empathetic
Mhm.
in addition to accurate reflective listening.
Mhm.
So under the category of it feels right, you don't want it to feel too awkward. You don't want it to feel like it's pulling teeth. For the therapist too. The therapist doesn't want to feel like they're pulling teeth either. They're in a therapy, not dentistry.
Right.
And then lastly, you want the therapist to have a treatment plan that reflects your wants and needs, what you're trying to achieve in therapy. So the treatment plan is basically like, okay, so here's your issue, make sure it's accurate. And this is what your end goal is, make sure it's accurate. Here's the points and the plans of how we're going to get there. So that's a treatment plan. You want to make sure your therapist does that. A lot of them don't.
Mhm.
It's actually required by insurance companies and many state laws to develop a treatment plan.
Okay.
So you want a therapist that develops a treatment plan. I mean, it doesn't have to be like super formal, but you want it at least be at a minimum discussed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So making sure the treatment plan reflects your wants and needs, what you're actually trying to get out of therapy. So all of this package, the therapist has a good treatment plan, validating, empathetic, accurate, reflective listening. It feels right. Good fit. You got a good therapist there. The other things to avoid, even if you have these things, you want to avoid a therapist that has really strong opinions about things that aren't related to the therapy work. For example, if a client comes in and says, my boss was riding my ass the other day and he's such a dick and blah, blah, blah. And if your therapist goes, yeah, what a motherfucking asshole. I can't believe he would do that. I mean, it's a little beyond being empathetic. That's like hijacking it.
Yeah.
That's making it something that it really doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
Maybe that therapist has a personal experience with your boss. You don't know that. They probably don't say that, but
Uh-huh.
that's going to cloud what that therapist does with you
Mhm.
because it's going to be more about them than you.
Mhm.
Sometimes therapists don't realize this is what's happening. Sometimes they do and they rein it in. If they can rein it in, sorry, I just got on my soapbox, I'm off, I'm done. Let's focus back on you. Then that's fine. If they can rein it in, cool. But if not, that's not cool. And lastly, you want to avoid an overly critical therapist, critical about anything. If you have an overly critical therapist, then that means their critical part's in the driver's seat a lot, not their therapist part. And so that's going to color what goes on in the therapy room as well. Yeah.
What parts of the therapist are forefront when they're working with a client? I assume it's nurturing. I assume it's got to be logical.
Logical for sure. Yeah.
Are there,
It's all of them,
okay.
all of the parts at different times because all are necessary. For example, I'll just give as quick examples as I can. If someone is in a domestic violence situation, the therapist protector part is like, listen, this is a safety issue, and I'm concerned about you and your kids, and here's some safety steps you can take, and I suggest a shelter or a domestic violence advocate or whatever. And so that'd be protector part. Responsible part be like, so what hoops do you have to jump through to make sure that you and your kids are safe and you have enough money, you can get out on your own, blah, blah, blah. The logical part would be like, so what would be all parts are working together here. So what's the safest time? When is he gone or she gone or whatever? Who can help you with this? So logistical planning of extracting yourself from the situation, nurturing, like, listen, I really care about you and your kids. You don't deserve to be treated like this. You deserve to be treated with love and respect, which is what you signed up for, but he's not providing, so on and so forth. Kid part would be like, I'm scared. And the critic will be like, man, this motherfucker, you really shouldn't be treating you like this. All of that working together to be like, listen, with the empathy, don't say I know how you're feeling because you don't necessarily know how they're feeling, but I can imagine this is one of the worst things you've gone through. This would be really tough for me to go through. You're so brave, so on and so forth. And let me just help you get through this. So all of the parts would be working together for the client's best good, not necessarily what I want or what I think or whatever. It's for the client. So that's how you know that the therapist part, it's a conglomeration of all of these parts, is in the driver's seat. So we've been talking a lot about what therapy is and what it looks like. Let's talk about what therapy isn't.
All right. This podcast.
Right? Yeah. So I'm curious, off the top of your head, what do you think therapy isn't?
Well, it isn't listening to a podcast and saying, oh, my therapist said, when you're talking to your friends, my therapist said, da da da. I mean, I expect that people who do listen to us would listen to the things that you're saying and go, oh, I could kind of apply that to myself. But that doesn't mean that you are their therapist.
Right.
You actually have to have a back and forth relationship.
Yep. You're right. Absolutely. So just listening to a podcast about therapy is not therapy. You're right.
Right. Or watching the guys on TikTok.
Yeah.
Or Instagram or whatever. Like, I love Therapy Jeff. And he sits down and he says, he explains things and he's really, really cool. I think I've sent you some of his stuff before.
Yeah.
And I joke and say, my TikTok therapist says, but I know he's not my therapist.
I love it. That's good stuff. You're absolutely right. Yes. There's so many things what therapy isn't. So if you actually are talking with a therapist, it's not just venting. It's not just gossiping. If you're just there to vent and your therapist is just there venting with you, they're not doing their job. If they're gossiping with you, they're not doing their job. Therapy is not having a paid friend. A lot of people are really lonely, and I get it. A lot of people have negative cognitions. I'm alone. I'm not good enough. I'm never going to amount to anything. And then they have a therapist who's validating and empathetic. It's like, oh my God, no one's treated me this good before. And then they misconstrue the relationship. It's a working relationship. You're working on stuff together in relationship, but it's not a friend relationship. It's not an acquaintance relationship. It's not a community support relationship. And so a lot of people who are really lonely, want their therapist to be their friend because they're the most friendly person in their life, which sucks.
And the only person maybe that listens to them when they talk.
Yeah, that's right.
And I can see how that can develop into a very unhealthy relationship on the part of the client.
Yeah, absolutely. So if your therapist is just being a paid friend, they're not doing their job either. Lastly, and I'm going to emphasize this, therapy is not a way to fix anybody but yourself. I've had so many parents bring their kids to me like, fix my kid. Like, that's not my job, that's yours.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't get it. And I'm like, well, honestly, you're the one who really needs therapy. They're like, no, not me. It's my kid. It's my kid's fault. It's my kid's problem. It's my kid making me this way. That's not therapy. I'm not here to fix anybody but you.
Mm-hmm.
If the kid wants to work on something, I'm more than happy. But if you're, as a parent, coming and telling me what the kid's doing wrong and bad and all of these things, and I need to make the kid this way, that's not the way this works.
Mm-hmm.
You're the parent, not me.
Well, and usually the answer to a misbehaving child is the parent anyway. Just like there are no bad dogs,
Yes.
there are bad dog owners.
Yes.
I
Yep.
think it's the same thing with kids. I don't have kids myself, but I did, go to school for child psychology.
Yep.
And I have lots of friends that have kids, and I was a nanny and a preschool teacher and all that.
Yep.
And I've seen all that. And
Hmm.
I see these kids are wonderful when they're with me.
Yeah.
And then I, give the little report card. Joey was so sweet today. He came and gave me a hug for no reason, da da da. And then the
Oh.
mom comes to me and goes, he doesn't do that with me. I can't believe he's so good when he's here. He's horrible at home. And I'm
Uh-huh.
like, that seems like something you might want to look into.
Yep, that's right.
So I think a lot of times when parents are, I'm not saying everything, but when parents think there's something wrong with their kid, maybe there is,
Hmm.
but it might also be something that the way that they have been raised so far.
Absolutely. Yep. A lot of the time, it's honestly just behavioral tweaks. You don't even have to do anything groundbreaking or something
Hmm.
completely out of the ordinary. It's literal tweaks in your behavior.
Hmm. Or just a different set of words to use,
Yeah.
or a different look on your face when you say it.
Yeah. Bring the emotional intensity down. Imagine how much that's going to help.
Hmm.
There's so many things in this right here that I could really launch into, but I'm just going to make a couple of points. I have a book. I'm tethered to my microphone, so I'm not going to go grab it. But this book by Saul Severe is How to Behave So Your Kids Will Too.
Oh,
Yeah, it's an old book.
okay.
It's a good one.
Good.
Yeah. And then the other thing is if you think your kid needs fixed, you are the rudder for this ship of your family.
Hmm.
If you aren't looking at yourself, you're only looking outside of yourself for problems, you're not going to help anything. Again, small behavioral tweaks within yourself for your kid, it's going to make a big difference.
Hmm.
Again, doesn't have to be anything earth-shattering or groundbreaking or anything like that. Small tweaks. All right, so off the soapbox. We're talking about, again, what makes a good therapist, how to find a good therapist. Here are your responsibilities as a therapy client, because a lot of people don't think about this. The first thing is being open and honest enough. You don't have to spill your guts about everything. Just be open and honest enough about what you're working on.
Hmm.
And that's the most important thing, because how you answer questions or what you say is going to be the rudder for your therapist. If I ask a client, what's the level of intensity right now, and they're at like an 80 out of 100, and like, oh, it's like a 30 out of 100. Well, it looks to me like you're an 80 out of, no, it's fine. Okay, what am I supposed to do with that? Okay, so let's just pay attention to what's going on in your body right now. What's going on in your stomach? Does it feel okay? Is it churning? Is it sour? Like what's going on in your stomach right now? I can ask these questions and get deeper and really help the client be like, yeah, I guess I am at an 80 instead of a 30. But at the same time, that takes a lot more time and a
Yeah.
lot more effort on my end. If you're trying to get done with therapy in 3 months and this is what we're doing, it's going to take 3 years.
Hmm.
And so again, be open and honest enough with what you're trying to achieve in therapy, your symptoms, your thoughts, your emotions, your behaviors. Be open and honest enough. Again, you don't have to be open and honest about everything. That's going to take more time than it needs to. But
Hmm.
if I don't know what you're thinking and feeling, I don't really have a good direction to go.
Hmm.
Next responsibility as a client, follow through. Follow through with showing up for your appointments. If you don't make your appointments, how are you supposed to achieve anything?
Right.
The next thing to follow through is your therapy assignments. If your therapist says, hey, pay attention to your protector part in this next week, and you don't, well, I guess we're going to spend the first half of the next session paying attention to your protector part.
Mm-hmm.
Again, if you follow through with your therapist's assignments, suggestions, your appointments, things are going to go a lot more quickly,
Mm-hmm.
which is what everybody wants, especially your
Mm-hmm.
insurance company. But who
Yeah.
cares? If you want to get to a certain place, then follow through. It's going to help you get there a lot more quickly. The last thing to follow through with is just your general reflections of yourself between your therapy appointments. So, paying attention to your triggers, what kicks up any negative cognitions like I'm not good enough, I'm never going to amount to anything. What's going on with your parts of self? What's going on with your interactions, so on and so forth. So, just generally reflecting on yourself between appointments is also going to give you a lot more speed with which you're going to achieve your therapy goals. So let's say you find a good therapist, it's a good fit, you're following through, you're actually working on your goals. When you should decide to try a different therapist. You might not ever have to try a different therapist. You might have good luck with the therapist. You might have a good therapist for 10 years, which hopefully you're not in therapy that long, but sometimes it does take that long, especially the more extensive trauma and the earlier in childhood it is, so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a good fit, you like your therapist, but you need to find a different therapist, it's usually because the therapist is leaving or you change insurance or not in network with your insurance anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, therapist is retiring, going to a different agency, whatever and whatever. That's usually the main reason that people would have to find a new therapist if they have a good one. Just these technicalities. So a therapist has to be licensed in the state that you're in if you're doing telehealth. I'm licensed in Iowa and Minnesota. I can see people in Iowa and Minnesota because I'm licensed there. I can be in, let's say, Colorado and meet with someone who's in Minnesota or Iowa. I have to be licensed where the client is at.
Okay.
So if if you move out of state and your therapist isn't licensed for that state anymore, you can't see them.
Mm-hmm.
Some states, very few states have provisions for if it's telehealth, as long as you're licensed in the state that you're in, you can do telehealth. But most states don't do that. You have to be licensed in the state for that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really the main reasons. Insurance changes, licensure changes, whatever. Sometimes you make progress in therapy and you need to upgrade a therapist. Let's say you went for stabilizing and you're pretty stable and now your therapist is like, you know what, it's time for you to start doing some EMDR and parts work. I'm going to refer you to someone else because that's above my pay grade.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Then that's what you do. Hopefully it's a good therapist. You want to again establish this is a good fit, so on and so forth. Do they have good active reflective listening, so on and so forth. So sometimes you just level up and you need a therapist with more experience, more certification, or whatever. Sometimes you do really well in therapy. You reach your therapy goals, you work through a lot of good trauma stuff, and you're stable. Maybe you just need a maintenance therapist. Maybe your trauma therapist is like, listen, you're good to go. Let me give you referrals to someone that you might just want to meet with once a month just for stabilizing, and that's cool. So you're downgrading. Great.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you need a lateral move. Like if you have an EMDR therapist that isn't trained in ego state or whatever, then maybe the lateral move is another EMDR therapist that does have some ego state training. It's not like any of these are bad. It's just your needs change, and
Mm-hmm.
therefore the type of therapist you would want would change. Nothing wrong with that. Sometimes you want to try a different therapist if you feel like you're just spinning your wheels. I mean, even if it's a good fit, it feels right, all of these things. If you're just spinning your wheels, if you're feeling that way, the therapist's probably feeling that way too. Maybe it's time to get a fresh set of eyes, fresh set of thoughts, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so switching to a different therapist that way can help you just get out of that rut. And then lastly, if you're trying, it just never feels right, then it's just time for a different therapist. It seems kind of scary to have to look for another therapist, but if you're already established with someone, ask them for referrals. There's nothing wrong with that. If your therapist gets upset in any way of you asking referrals, well, it's a good choice to ask for referrals.
Yeah. I was going to ask, like, let's say you're feeling like this just isn't, I don't feel like I'm vibing with this person.
Hmm.
And I am too scared to tell them that.
Hmm.
What do you do then? Do you go, like, I assume they're working for an agency or something. Maybe they're not.
Hmm.
But how would you go about that? Would you recommend they just buckle up and tell the therapist?
Yeah.
Or, yeah, that's the best
Yep.
way to do it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I said, you got to be open and honest enough. It
Hmm.
can be scary, but like just saying, I don't know if this is working. What do you think about trying a different treatment plan or just referring me to a different therapist? It's, there's nothing wrong with trying that out because, again, if your therapist gets upset in any way, then that was a good choice to
Yeah.
um, move on.
Yeah. So a therapist probably has been through this before, unless they're brand new.
Yeah.
Most therapists probably have had someone say, I don't know if this is working.
Yeah.
So from a therapist point of view, because I know this is what I would be thinking if it were me going, I think I need to tell them that this isn't working. I would be so worried about what they are thinking that
Right.
it would prevent me from doing it. And I would just
Hmm.
go along with it anyway. So what does a therapist normally feel when they hear that? Is that like, oh, it's a Tuesday? Or do they sit there and go, God, I wonder what I did wrong with her that she doesn't want to see me anymore? You know,
Yeah.
like, because that's what I would worry about, that my therapist would think that.
Hmm. I can only speak for myself and the therapists that I've actually worked with and talked with about this. And it really depends on the client and the circumstance and so on and so forth. There's so many different factors that really play into how a therapist reacts or responds. So I'll give you some examples. Like one lady I was working with, I just started talking with her about parts of self and just trying to introduce the concept. And she's like, well, that's stupid. I'm like, well, okay, but this has been really successful with other people. And she's like, nah, that's not what, nah, nah, nah. And then like she started talking about something else. She was just gossiping. And then she's like, a part of me feels like this, but like 20 minutes later, and I'm like, okay, yeah, parts of self are stupid. Anyway,
Yeah.
um, she decided not to come back, which is okay
Oh,
with me,
mm-hmm.
which is okay with me.
Yeah.
I had another client who was a DHS case. Her kids were in DHS custody and she was just doing sob story. All these people are out to get me and blah, blah, blah. And like, I'm trying to work with you. I'm trying to help you out. And she wasn't necessarily giving me much to work with.
Mm-hmm.
And then I talked with her DHS worker and got some of that side of the story. I'm like, yeah, that's tracking with what I'm noticing. And so the next time I talked with her, I'm like, listen, I've been trying to help you out, but you've not been open and honest with me enough to help you and all of this stuff. And she just, it's like, you need to wipe that smirk off your face and I can't believe you and blah, blah, blah. And she stormed out of the room and I didn't see her again. That's fine. See ya.
Oh,
See ya. So stuff like this, like I don't have any real like, oh, what did I do? I know it's on them. For me, with both of those clients, it never felt right for me. It felt like
mm-hmm.
spinning wheels on my end.
Mm-hmm.
And so when those types of clients see themselves out the door, that's fine with me. They
Mm-hmm.
weren't ready or willing for therapy. They just wanted to
Yeah.
vent or gossip or have a paid friend.
Mm-hmm.
That's not therapy.
Yeah.
Some clients I've had have been more stick with me. And these are the really not fun cases. Like if a DHS case goes a certain way and kids are put back with their parents and the parents just do meth again the next day and so on and stuff like that. It's like there are more tragic outcomes. And that's what sticks with me because
Mm-hmm.
I have no control over that. There's nothing I could have done about that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Sometimes I can reflect on certain sessions or with certain things with clients like, oh man, I was not attuned or I said something kind of fucked up there that didn't come out right. And it's like I can repair those little ruptures with clients. It's not a problem. As long as there's still a relationship going on, not a big deal. That's fine. We can smooth it out and move
Mm-hmm.
forward, make it therapeutic even. But it's again the more tragic ones that stick with me. Other clients get really offended or butthurt or whatever, like, I can't believe they just left me like that because what did I do wrong? Like, well, you didn't do anything wrong. It's not about you, it's about them. And so that's why, you want a therapist who's not overly critical or gets super, emotionally intense about stuff, because that really does make it about them. This is
Mm-hmm.
about you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's more I can say, but that's the gist of it.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll know you have a good therapist when they can just sit back and be like, "Yeah, it's not about me, it's about you. What do
Yeah.
you want to What do you want? It's not about me."
Mm-hmm. Well, and I imagine that if a client is not feeling it with a therapist, the therapist is probably feeling that as well.
Yeah, usually.
And they're probably like, yeah, it's that tracks. I'll get you
Hmm.
somebody else.
Yeah. And no hard feelings in that. Sometimes therapists know it's just not a good fit, or this is above my pay grade, or it's below my pay grade, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with that. If you are trying to find another therapist, then ask your current therapist for referrals.
Okay.
They don't have to give you referrals. It's a courtesy thing. They should give you referrals, but what they don't have to do is continue to see you until you have another therapist lined up.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
If they give you enough notice, like, listen, this isn't quite working right, or we're not making progress toward goals, or we've been spinning our wheels, as long as there's a formal conversation, and I'll see you a few more sessions. Hopefully, you can find a therapist until then, but here's referrals. Have at it.
Mm-hmm.
That's not client abandonment. Client abandonment is basically just ghosting a client
Mm-hmm.
or saying, oh, I'm just not going to see you anymore, and I'm not scheduling any further appointments with you for no real reason.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't want a therapist who will just abandon you. That's pretty much against ethics, and some
Mm-hmm.
states it's illegal
Yeah.
to just do client abandonment. So you want your therapist to at least give you some referrals, give you a heads up, give you some notice.
Well, this is great. I wanted to mention things like the other kind of telehealth, like BetterHelp and
Mm.
those online ones that you hear about in all podcasts
Yeah, right.
ads. I got interested in BetterHealth a while ago, and
Hmm.
I went to their website, and it said you could pay on a sliding fee scale. They do not take insurance,
Right.
which tells me they probably are not, if they can't diagnose you, they can't get insurance. So does that mean they're therapists that are not able to diagnose people?
No, that's
Oh,
not the case. Every therapist that they onboard is licensed and can do diagnosing, but they don't do insurance to make it cheaper, more accessible to people. And the problem with insurance networks is it's so many hoops to jump through.
hmm.
It would take a while for anybody at BetterHelp or Talkspace or whatever to get credentialed. It's just too many hoops to jump through, too many people to keep track of. It's just not a sustainable way to do it with
Hmm.
that kind of platform. So that's why
Okay.
they don't do it. It's more streamlined, it's more economical for them to just do out of pocket,
Okay.
which I get. But no,
Yeah.
all of their therapists are licensed. They're
Hmm.
all able to diagnose and treat mental health disorders. That's
Okay.
not the issue. Again, it's just jumping through the credentialing hoops is ridiculous.
Okay. Yeah, I did that, and it was right after I lost my job, so I had zero income.
Yeah.
And it said it was on a sliding fee scale.
Hmm.
And so I went in and I put in my income, which was zero.
Uh,
And it still told me that it was going to be $250 a session.
wow.
And I was like, well, I can't afford that.
Nope.
I wouldn't be able to eat.
Mm-mm.
So I just canceled it.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But I mean, I am in a different situation. I do have a spouse who makes money, so
Hmm.
I could probably still afford that, although that was really high, I thought.
Yeah, too high.
Even for somebody that makes good money, that seems really high. For an
250
hour?
for us. Yeah, that's
Um,
nuts.
yeah.
I did sign up to do therapy through BetterHelp being a therapist.
Hmm.
And I only did that for a few months because the platform just was not therapist friendly at all.
Oh, really?
And that $250 you paid for that session, you know how much the
Hmm.
therapist got out of that?
Boy.
50, 60.
I was going to say probably 50 or so. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
So they're making money.
they're making money. Yep. And so the
Hmm.
demands for the therapist through BetterHelp, I can't talk about Talkspace. I didn't try that. Basically, it's all the general therapy things, but the client can message you at all times of day and all
Yeah.
hours of the night, and they expect you to message back with like within an hour or whatever. And then you don't get paid for the time you're putting in to send these messages back. I mean, this is all
Oh,
clinical work that you're still doing and you're not getting paid
yeah.
for. And
Yeah, that's
then,
yucky.
yeah. And then the client can like rate you every session or in between sessions. And
Mhm.
it just gets to be like just a, opinion based merit, whatever. And I can do everything right. I had a client who always gave me 100%, but at the moment I wasn't available to her right when she wanted it,
Mm.
she gave me a bad review, and that was that.
Yeah, that's that being on call all the time. No, I wouldn't want to sign up for that.
No, it was kind of ridiculous. So, for the people who are doing therapy through BetterHelp, Talkspace, whatever, I hope it is helpful for you. I'm sure it is. There are some good
Yeah,
therapists out there on those platforms.
sure.
But a lot of therapists who are in private practice or know how these types of things work will be like, nope, this sucks and won't have any part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, again, you can find some really good therapists through those platforms, but you probably want to look for someone who's more independent. A
Yeah.
standalone agency, a private practice. I have my own private practice. It's just me, literally. So
Mm-hmm.
you want to look for someone who has a little more self-respect too,
Yeah.
if that makes
How
sense.
how would you recommend somebody start looking for someone if you're not going to go through your insurance agency
Uh-huh.
and go through those menus and stuff? If
Mhm.
you just want to find somebody,
Yeah.
is there like a portal online that you can go in and type in what you want and it gives you people in your area or anything like that?
The best thing I can say for that would be emdria.org's Find a Therapist tool. If you're looking for an
Okay.
EMD or a therapist, emdria.org, find a therapist. That is your
Okay.
best bet.
Okay. I'll put that link in the show notes.
Absolutely. That's the thing I give to everybody. But if you're not just looking for an EMDR therapist, anyone will do, just internet search. It doesn't have to be anyone near you. It just has to be someone in your state so you
Sure.
know they're licensed for you.
Yeah.
Telehealth is just as good as in person. I mean, of course, it's personal preference,
Hmm.
but from everything that I have done personally and what studies have shown, it's just as effective in telehealth as it is in person.
Sure.
So, really, just an internet search. And you might have to call or email or whatever until you can find someone who has availability, because that's often the biggest barrier is who has
Hmm.
availability.
Yeah. Like
There's
you're
just
pretty booked up, aren't you?
always,
Yeah.
always. When I have someone reach out to me like, "Hey, do you have any openings?" I'm like, "Yes," but it's like every other week or random
Hmm.
times. Like I do have availability, but not a weekly dedicated time slot like I like to give people.
Right.
Like most people need, especially in the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah. So availability is the biggest issue. And I honestly don't recommend going through your insurance to get the directory because oftentimes they're not up to date.
Mm.
Blue Cross Blue Shield in Iowa does a really good job of keeping their credential directory updated. It's essentially every 3 to 6 months they're making sure that you are still working and practicing at this location. You are still taking new telehealth clients or whatever. Like, so some insurance companies do a lot better with their directory than others. But again, I would do an internet search and then once you find a therapist that looks good, making sure you ask them, are you in network with my insurance?
Okay.
And if they're not in network, well, maybe they have a out of pocket fee that's cheaper. Like I have discounted flat rates for people who pay out of pocket.
Hmm.
Sometimes there's sliding fee scale. So if someone who makes less than $1,000 a month, like I've got a lady I see pro bono, which is for free.
Hmm.
So I have another client or two that are on like sliding fee scale. So I mean, it
Hmm.
really just depends. You don't have to have a therapist that's in network in your insurance as long as their self pay rate is doable for you.
Sure.
Of course, you want to use insurance, you're already paying for it, of course.
Hmm.
So, anyway, I could go on and on and on about that. But again, if you can find a therapist that's actually available, then that's the biggest hump.
Yeah. At least starting with that person. And if they don't work out,
Hmm.
maybe they can refer you to somebody else. And that's easier than going through the whole thing all over again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
especially if this therapist is at an agency and there's other therapists at the agency. Once you're a client established at the agency, they're more likely to allow you to try a different therapist at the same agency.
Sure.
And that way you don't have to wait and all of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, mdria.org, find a therapist, or internet search. It's the best bet.
Okay. All right. Well, this has been very interesting. Thank you for covering this topic. I think this will be good for a lot of people.
Yeah, you're welcome. I think it's always good for everybody because who knows when shit happens, life takes a turn, and we need some extra help. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
This Way In is co-produced by Brittany Baxter Delano and me, Amy Lotsberg, at Collected Sounds Media. I also edit and manage the show, which is part of the Collected Sounds Independent Podcast Network.